Hi, this is Jeffrey, and in today's video, I wanted to show you my vintage camera collection that I have on display in my living room. Now, I bought these mostly on eBay, and I bought them mostly for display purposes, or basically exclusively only for display purposes. There's no way that you could really use most of these cameras for actually taking pictures, because film for these cameras is basically not available anymore, or if they are, they're very expensive, or if you do find the film for them, it's almost impossible to get them processed. Not totally impossible, but almost impossible. But these cameras make really, really great display pieces, and that's what I purchased them, mainly for. So as you can see, I have them here lined up on a shelf unit in my living room. And so let's take a look at each individual one and how each one of these cameras is really, really unique in its design. Now, the first two cameras we have here are Kodak 8 movie cameras. They used 8mm film, and they were from the early 1960s. On the right, you have the Automatic 8, and on the left is the Hawkeye 8. Now, these two cameras were in a series of very, very similar designs. There were others that were produced very similarly, and I do have another one that is like this that you will see in a little while. But these two cameras were just very, very representative of the typical movie camera in the 1960s. By that time, Kodak had already moved to plastic, and the Automatic 8, the green one, has a green shade that is just so typical of the early 1960s. It was just a very popular type of color back then. We may think of it as an ugly shade of green today, but back then it was pretty popular. And as you can see, the Automatic 8 also has silver or chrome-like accents on it, which really enhances the design. And I really, really like the Automatic 8. I think it's just a really interesting camera in terms of the color, in terms of its chrome accents, and it's just so representative of the cameras of its time. So the next two cameras we have here are the Wollensak iMatic and the Wollensak Model 42. And this company, Wollensak, made just really, really fantastic looking cameras. I mean, these are just beautiful. At least to me they are. And they are solid metal. They weigh a ton. I don't know how people, carry these cameras around with them all day long, because they are just so extremely heavy. And this is without film. So it may have been even more heavier with the type of film that these cameras required. And they are like in a two-tone silver finish. They are just really, really beautiful. If you could find a really good example of one, they are just fantastic looking cameras. I mean, look at that. These were produced back in like the late 1950s, I believe, or maybe early 1960s. So these two are very typical of their time, but they are of the more expensive type of a movie camera than the Kodaks, and that is, of course, expressed through the material that it uses. And as you can see, the Wollensak iMatic has a triple lens, but these cameras were just gorgeous. I just really love the design. I mean, look at that. It is just really like an Art Deco type of a design, and they're very architectural as well. I mean, they are just beautiful pieces of industrial product design of the era that they represented. So here we have a camera that is similar to the Wollensak. This is the Tower triple lens camera. So as you can see, the materials and the colors are very similar, and there must have been some type of connection between Tower and Wollensak. I believe this Tower camera was sold mainly in Sears, from what I believe. And the top of this camera has a light meter mounted on it. That light meter is plastic, while the entire rest of the camera is metal. And that light meter is detachable. You don't have to have it on it, but this camera did come with the light meter. And it's just also a really, really great camera of its time. I mean, look at that beautiful design. The next movie camera we have is the Kodak turret camera. And this also is just such an interesting looking design. I mean, look at that. This is a really, really fierce looking camera with that big triple lens on it and that big light meter on the left side. It also has a very large winder, and the viewfinder is all the way on the top, as you can see here. Look at that viewfinder. So this too was just a really, really unique camera, and I just really like the way it looked. It's just just another camera that represents the design of its time. I mean, just look at that. It is really, really interesting. So the next one is the Sign Kodak Magazine 8 camera. And this camera is also of a really, really nice Art Deco design. As you can see, it's black and silver. The front has vertical black and silver stripes on it. And it's just overall a really, really nice looking camera. It is very slim. It has a large viewfinder on top, and it has a handle on top that you can carry it around with you with. So it really is quite a nice little camera, especially for display purposes. So the next two cameras here are produced by Keystone. We have the Keystone Bel Air on the right and the Keystone Olympic on the left. And both of these cameras are just really, really nice in terms of their, false brown leather exterior. And they are just really, really great looking cameras. I mean, they were just so well done. Look at that. All of the detailing on it you can see. And these also were of a very, very nice Art Deco design. I mean, they're just gorgeous cameras. They're made very, very well. And they're also like works of art. They're just really, really fantastic. Now, these two are very similar, but as you can see, the front panel has slightly different designs on them. But they are just really, really fantastic display pieces. I mean, look at that. You don't see cameras made like this anymore. Now, the next two cameras we will look at are from the 1970s. This is the Bell & Howell Autoload 670 XL. And I've actually done a separate video on this camera. And this was a very plasticky camera, very lightweight. It just was very representative of the mid-1970s. I believe this dated from 1974. But it does have a very, modern and futuristic type of a design. The body is mostly black plastic, but the front is silver, like a chrome type of a color. And it was just sort of futuristic looking for its time. Back then in the 1970s, they were designing things that they would imagine in the year 2000 or so. So this camera was kind of representative of that, which is why I purchased it. It's just really interesting in terms of its, detailing. Even though it's a cheap camera, this is a very cheap camera of its time, but it just has some very nice design detailing that is representative of the 1970s. Now, the next camera here is the GAF S72. This also was from the mid-1970s, from approximately the same time as the Bell & Howell camera we just looked at. And what I liked about this camera is its, fake wood grain pattern on it. I I mean, it just, it is just so 1970s. It's an all plastic camera. It was made in Japan, and it's not really made very well. When you handle it, you'll see that it's just, not manufactured all that great. Now, this camera came in two versions, the S70 and the S72, which we have here. Now, the S70 was a lower spec model, and it did not have the silver accents around the fake wood grain finish. So to me, the S72 was the more attractive camera. It had more accents on it. It had more detailing on it. But the S72 is really quite an attractive looking camera, even though it's, somewhat cheaply manufactured. The next camera we have here is the Kodak 8 Reflex. And this is what I call the beast. I mean, this camera is really, really huge, and it weighs a ton. I really liked its design. The front of it has that very, very big light meter on top. And as you can see, it has a very, very large lens. This camera, I mean, it is huge, and I don't know how anyone actually was able to carry around this camera. Now, when I received this camera, I also received the instruction booklet with it. And what's interesting is that it shows like young women walking around with this camera. And honestly, I don't know how women walked around with this gigantic, heavy camera, if that was the case. I mean, it's not really something you just put in your purse and you walk around with it all day long, because it would just weigh you down. I mean, it weighs a ton. So that could have been its undoing. It's like just super weightiness to it. But overall, it's just another really interesting camera that's very representative of the design of its time. So here we have another iteration of the Kodak 8mm movie camera we saw that is very, very similar to the first two. This design is a little bit more simplified than the others, but it's still quite interesting as how it represents the design of the early 1960s movie cameras. Now, the two cameras you see here, I did not purchase on eBay. I've had them since they were brand new. So on the right here, we have the Canon A620, and on the left, above, you have the Canon PowerShot G6. Now, these types of cameras really are not produced anymore. They're just not making cameras like the A620. Now, the A620, for its time, back in the early 2000s, I think it was like around 2006, 2007 or so, that camera became a really, really well-known camera. It was sort of like a cult camera. It produced really, really beautiful images. It took 4 AA batteries, and it is, another plastic digital camera, but it had a really great sensor in it, and it took really, really great pictures. So this is a camera that I've had since it was brand new, and so I put this on display because they just don't make cameras like this anymore. And it was a 7.1 megapixel camera. Now, the Canon PowerShot G6 was like the flagship camera of its time. It was very expensive. I bought this new. I think I paid $475 for it back in 2004 or so. And I never really used it much. It used compact flash media, which today is like almost impossible to find. I guess you can find it, but they are really expensive, and they're just not really found in that many places anymore to easily purchase. And even though these two cameras took really, really great pictures, they're kind of obsolete because they can't take high definition video. The batteries don't last all that long, and so they just don't produce cameras like this. Unfortunately, because they did take, in terms of still images, these two cameras had really great sensors, and they took really great pictures. And, I guess that's technology for you. The cell phone won out over the supposedly modern digital camera. So over here we have the Color Burst 100. These cameras were produced by Kodak back in the mid to late 1970s. And this one is such a great example of those types of Kodak instant cameras. It really is probably my favorite one of all of the Kodak instant cameras, and I have more than one of these types of film cameras. Now, this camera has a fake leather front right below where all of the controls are, where the lens is. It is it is just such an interesting looking camera. I think it's silver, brown, and black. It's just with chrome accents. It's just such a great looking camera, and it just makes such a fantastic looking display piece. Here we have the GAF 76XF, which was from the mid 1970s. And this is kind of similar to the GAF S72, which has a wood grain finish on the front with chrome silver accents. This camera came in a very nice presentation box with a rainbow on it, which is very reminiscent of Peter Max type of graphics from that era. It also comes with a box of film, of color print film that is unopened, and I still have not opened it, along with the instructions. I got this on eBay for about $10, the entire set. And I really liked the design of this camera because of the very, very 1970s-ish wood grain finish on it. Now here we have two very large instant cameras. On the right is the Kodak 940, and on the left is the Continental Color Shot 2000. So the Kodak 940 was by Kodak, but the Color Shot 2000 was from a company called Continental. And the Color Shot 2000 is actually very similar to the camera that we just took a look at, which is the Color Burst 100. Now, they both took the same type of film. The only difference here is that the Continental Color Shot 2000 was actually produced right after Kodak was ordered to stop making their instant film, which this camera took. See, what happened was Kodak was sued by Polaroid, and Polaroid won, and Kodak was required to pay Polaroid over $900 million in damages, and they also had to stop producing their cameras as well as the film for their cameras. So their cameras became basically useless at that time. I think it was in the early 1980s or so. So anyone who bought the Continental Color Shot 2000 probably could not use it because there was basically no film for it anymore. Maybe you could find film for it in some stores, but you probably could not use it for very long. And here we have the Party Time Instant Camera, which was another instant camera by Kodak, which was also very similar to the Color Burst 100. Now, I also did a separate video on this Party Time camera, and I also wanted to mention that I also did a separate video on the Color Burst 100, as well as the Continental Color Shot 2000 that we have just looked at a few minutes ago. And finally, we have an absolutely superb example of a Polaroid land camera. This is just it's like a beautiful piece of mid-century design, mid-century product manufacturing. It's a very large camera. It's a heavy camera. This camera came with all of the flash attachments, and it's just in absolutely perfect condition. It has some very nice Art Deco detailing on it. It is just a beautiful, beautiful piece. So I really hope you enjoyed this look at my vintage camera collection. And as always, thank you for watching and have a great day. Bye.